This is my social media kit for the Compassion Collective. That is the name of the podcast. Growth is a process. It does not happen overnight. Be prepared to have things change. Be prepared to evolve your project, your ideas, maybe a little bit of who you are. We'll see how that goes, but nothing has to be perfect. It just has to be the learning experience for you. The other thing is, don't be afraid to reach out. Ryan is great. He responds so fast. Also, the class chat that we have, people are very quick to respond there and very helpful. And sometimes you get different perspectives and ideas, something that you didn't think of. Oh, I should have tried it that way. So don't be afraid to reach out. There is so much support in this class, and there's so much support throughout UTSA Online. If you ever have any questions, people are willing and ready to help you and to answer those questions.
Melinda, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. Please tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, hey, I'm so happy to be here. Like you said, Melinda, I am a senior communications major here at UT San Antonio Online. I'm graduating this May, so I'm really excited about that. I came back to school after about 12, 13 years of not being in school. So it was definitely tricky and scary starting again, but it's been so much fun. I work for the city of San Antonio. I love what I do, and I wanted to have more opportunities and grow within that career. So I thought communications was the perfect way to do that. I'm looking at maybe going to grad school after and just seeing where that takes me.
Awesome. And you wanted to create a podcast. Tell us about your idea for creating a podcast and why you chose it. What was the purpose of it?
Yeah, so we have to take this class or a similar class in order to graduate. And I thought the podcasting class seemed like a fun way to really express some of that creativity. So I will say, when we started and I was looking at everything, it was a little overwhelming to figure out, what do I want to talk about? Because I think I came in not really having an idea of what I wanted my podcast to be. And so I kind of floated around a couple of ideas with my partner, things that I'm passionate about. We could talk about movies, and then, but that takes a lot of research and the time of it all. And so at the end of the day, I was like, I'm passionate about pets. I'm passionate about animals. So let's talk about our pets. Let's talk about how those relationships have impacted our lives and how so much of that has changed who I am as a person. So that's where it all started.
So you chose a passion project, but that passion is reflective of you. So if you were ever in an interview and you wanted that interviewer to get to know you as an interviewee, then you'd be showing not only the product, but also the passion.
Exactly. I have a passion for people. I have a passion for animals. And so I think this was the perfect way to combine those two things.
And with that kind of purpose pitch that we start with, were there any challenges in trying to figure out the angle for the show?
Yes. So I think when I first started, I was looking at, okay, how do I make this? We're doing digital media and doing all of these things. So do I incorporate that in? And so I think with my first purpose pitch, the way it was set up was, okay, we're going to pick one story to tell about a pet. Someone will come on and talk about it. We're going to discuss with one shelter or nonprofit, give them the opportunity to talk and talk about different marketing campaigns they've done and things that they do within the city. So that was where it started. And then as I started working on everything and I have to reach out to people and schedule these interviews and do this. And so it's getting someone to interview to talk about their pet. It's getting a shelter to get time to interview about their projects and the different things they're doing. And I had to take a step back and be like, oh, maybe that's a little bit more than I have time for. So let's reevaluate. And so I just saw the evolution of what my podcast turned into, where it is, let's focus more on just the people and the pet. And then we'll highlight one shelter or nonprofit at the end of every episode.
And when you were taking a deeper dive into your audience and doing interviews with potential audience members and looking at the survey answers, what were some of the challenges there? Did that change your approach at all?
Yes. So I think in doing those interviews, there were a lot of people who were very goal oriented, and those were the people who were interested in the digital media side of it, the learning from the shelter side of it. But the foundation and majority of people wanted easy listening. They just wanted a story. They wanted to be able to connect with a person or an animal. And so that definitely guided that. I'm going to put so much work into finding this organization and getting someone to talk to me. And I don't know what the time constraints are with that, when really all people truly want is talk about your pet for 30 minutes.
That's great. Not only that, but you're able to give people that joy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of it too is if you listen to the episodes, some of them aren't just joyful. Some of them talk about losing a pet or going through difficult moments with them. And so the entire thing is how do you navigate that and how do you come out of it on the other side? So while it may not be joyful at the beginning, we always want to try to end it with compassion and hope at the end.
Excellent. And did you have any other challenges with the persona before we move on to the trailer?
Yeah, so there was a lot of information. And I will say, don't be afraid to ask you or throw questions into into that class chat, or even throw a question into ChatGPT, like, give me more information on this, or do some research and give me an example of a persona. I know you provide examples, but sometimes getting more examples really help. Like, this is the way that my podcast will be set up. Give me an example of that. How should I go about it? And using it just as like a brainstorming technique, I think really was helpful in almost every assignment that we had this semester.
That's wonderful. Did you use mainly ChatGPT or did you try any of the other AIs out?
Yeah, so I think I mostly use Copilot just because it's what's on my computer, but I do also try ChatGPT. So sometimes I'll use both of them to get an idea of what are each one of them saying, because one will come out different than the other. And then it's like, okay, I can kind of use different ideas as like the starting point for what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And so interesting is Copilot is based on OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, right? So no matter what you're doing, each model is tweaked just a little bit differently and for a little bit different aims. So playing with the different ones, I think is a great idea for brainstorming, especially for something that's fun like a podcast where having that different perspective can help enrich a profile that you're creating that could help you better understand your audience, for example.
Right. Or even say, like, okay, I have this mock up of a persona and this is what I think my audience is. But then hey, ChatGPT, Copilot, can you review this? And it is really good at pointing out patterns that you may have missed or ideas you may have missed. So maybe I was going to focus more on the digital media and the shelter thing, but ChatGPT and Copilot are like, people just want stories. So it's okay, reevaluate, let's go.
Excellent. Tell us about your trailer. What were some challenges there and how did you put it together?
With the trailer, it was based on that first purpose pitch. So I don't necessarily feel like the trailer fits what the show ended up being, at least as of now. But it was difficult to really try to put your words onto a page. The good thing about the trailer is it can be scripted, right? You can or don't have to be on the camera. So it's a little bit of like getting your feet wet for the rest of the show. But I really do think the difficulties are just the starting point. Like, where do I start with this? Because this is the first time I've written a trailer, So what is it that I want to talk about?
And whenever you were like trying to put it together, did you use Adobe Express for the video? How did you actually Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Audition?
I used, is it Adobe Podcast? So I went in and I just recorded it. And what's great about that is you can go in and you can make edits, you can delete certain parts of a sentence and then just re-record it. And so it was very user-friendly, very easy to figure out. I think the most difficult part is when you listen back to things, sometimes you end up getting some choppy things going on. But I think that's just with more practice, So it's really not that big a deal. But it was very easy to work with.
Yeah. A lot of people get super self-conscious, not just like, oh my gosh, should I turn my camera on or not? Because that makes me self-conscious, but they're super self-conscious about their voice in their trailer. They're like, oh wait, I can make that a little bit better. Oh, maybe I stumbled over that word. It wasn't quite as natural. And
Right.
a lot of times we just want them, the authentic them, just their voice speaking the same way that they'd speak to a friend or the same way we're speaking right now, just a relaxed kind of delivery. And that's hard when you're going from a script sometimes. Did you find that to be challenging too?
Yes, definitely. I listen to it now and it's like, oh, you can tell when someone is scripted versus when they're just talking. And I do think that was a issue I kind of had throughout the course. And then depending on who I was speaking to, that would kind of change. But that was definitely an issue with that. You go in and you change it and, oh, let me re-record. And so it's a 30-second clip, but it took me 4 hours to record. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Let me mess with this. And yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense because a lot of times no one's ever done a podcast before. And it's a challenge to be able to show up as your authentic self, in part because you've been doing it so long. But when that camera or that mic turns on, it's like, wait a second, am I performing as my authentic self? Because that's part of the communication process is considering your audience, right?
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So tell us about your first episode. You had to do an interview and a solo part to make the first episode. So was the interview hard to schedule? Did it go up smoothly?
So, my interview, I decided to kick off my podcast with my partner. So, I interviewed him and we talked about our experience fostering a dog. So, it was not difficult to schedule. He was so just like whenever. So, that part of it was simple. But I think where it became difficult is you don't want to have a script going in, but you do want to have questions ready. And because it was the first one, I do feel like there are pieces of it that feel very authentic and flow really well. And then there are pieces of it where it's like, you can tell I'm just reading the question. We practiced it ahead of time. So he kind of created notes for himself and a little bit of a script. So then there are times where he doesn't seem super authentic and natural. And I think that's just, again, going back to as it goes on and as you do it more, you get that practice and it becomes easier.
Yeah, practice is such an important thing. So imagine that for your company or your public administration job, right? Imagine that you need to do a media interview. And this hopefully this experience helps to prepare you for that later date when that happens. And you're practicing it right now too, like just showing up on a podcast that will be public to say, hey, this is what I sound like, this is how I answer questions, and this is how I can help my organization.
Right. Yeah. So it's always just looking at that as even if it's not something you think it's going to help you right now, you're putting those skills away, right? You're growing them, you're learning from them, and you're using them in little acts every single day. And that's also part of the growth process.
For sure. And a lot of people struggle with either the interview part more or the solo part more. Which did you struggle with?
I think the solo part I struggled with more. The interview, like I said, we kind of prepared, so we had it ready to go. But the solo part, I had to wait until after we did the interview because I wanted to see, how is this going to turn out? What is the interview going to be like? What are things that I want to focus on from that interview to put in my solo piece to introduce my partner, introduce the story, and then to provide that like context and kind of wrap it up. And these are the main themes, these are the takeaways. I definitely struggled with that part of it because I think when I went back and listened to the interview, part of it was this is a little bit of a mess. It's the first one. So trying to find what are the themes, what are the takeaways, what are the things I want to focus on from this was definitely a little bit difficult.
Sure. And I think that's a natural thing because as you start, you're putting your hands on different pieces of the elephant without seeing that it's an elephant. Right? It's that old analogy, that whole idea of understanding by doing. You're learning by doing literally. How do I do this? What am I doing here? How does this work? And those kinds of struggles and questions and that uncomfortableness helps you grow, right?
Yes, right. And then it's one of those things where you can be retrospective about it and really think about, oh, what did I do? Would I do that again? And how would I do that differently this time? So even though it's not perfect that first time, that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's a learning experience.
Absolutely. So the video emphasis episode, did you have any challenges or struggles there?
Yes, I think a lot of people in class didn't really want to be on camera, and I definitely felt that sometimes too. Like it's a vulnerability, right? Like you're not just putting your voice out there, you're putting yourself out there, and I do think that makes you more vulnerable. So that was a little bit difficult, but then I really started playing around with creating images on Adobe Express and tying other things in and having things pop up behind me and was able to do like fun things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So like, oh, I look kind of weird in that moment. Let's kind of take some of that focus away from me and let's put a photo there. And, so it ended up being fun and something different. And it's again, one of those things that as you continue to do it, it does become more comfortable.
So you edited an Adobe podcast for the video as well?
For parts of the video, yes. Like I had to like break it up into pieces and then do some of the video there for the audio part of it, just to kind of enhance that. And then I would take those pieces and put them into Adobe Premiere Pro and then play around with that. And that's where I was able to like, let's add the photos and, do all of that stuff. So it was a lot of going between different softwares and figuring out how do I do this and what works here and what works here and what can I do with this. And so it is a lot of creative thinking on like how we're going to do that.
And did you have some experience with Adobe Premiere Pro before this class, or was this your first?
Yeah, I took one other class where we made like short form video and then a long form video. So I had minimal experience with it. And I will say, once I opened it back up again this semester, I was very like, where do I start again? it's a little overwhelming. It took me messing around with things and then thinking I had lost my project and finding it again to really start to feel comfortable in it again. So it's some practice, but you get it.
And that whole idea of leveling up your skills takes time, but no one has time. It's so hard to find time to level up skills for something like this, especially whenever you're working with your job, you got your other classes, you're just being pulled in so many different directions. I often find that people struggle with Adobe Premiere Pro compared to something like Adobe Podcast. And one of the reasons we have that assignment is so that people can find ways of accomplishing that goal. Some people use Adobe Express because there's such a lower barrier to entry in the editing process, but I find that those who bite off the Adobe Premiere Pro side have more skills when they graduate because they did the harder thing instead of the easier thing. But honestly, you can get away with both, right? Like you can use either one to accomplish the goal.
I felt like it was easier using Adobe Express for the shorter videos when we later in this semester when we were doing the social media videos, those 30-second clips. That was so much easier in Adobe Express, but the long videos, it was so much easier to work with in Premiere Pro once you kind of get a hang of the different functions.
That's an important insight. I think that will save people some time. Just that little nugget of wisdom there. Short videos, Adobe Express; long videos, Adobe Premiere Pro. Speaking of longer videos, the audio only episode, did you solely use Adobe Podcast or did you use anything else there?
No, so I still did a video for that one. So I did a lot of enhancing in Adobe Podcast and then still uploaded it to Premiere Pro. So then that way because you can still edit the audio in Premiere Pro, but I was having a lot of difficulty with that. So it was I'm going to stick to Adobe Podcast and upload the audio and then sync it to the video. And that seemed to work a lot better for me. And then I think it also made it sound so much better and so much clearer instead of manually making those changes in Premiere Pro because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And not only that, but I have found that a lot of students, especially if they have an older machine, if they're trying to do the audio enhancements on their machine instead of in the cloud, it sometimes just takes longer. Whereas if you can upload it to Adobe Podcast or Adobe Voice Enhance, which is a part of the Adobe Podcast tool set, then you're fixing the audio before you start working and editing. And having that done makes it so much easier to edit in Adobe Premiere Pro.
Yes, it really does.
After the audio and the video episodes, you did a social media experiment where you were trying to do short form video, which is king, and it probably will be king for our listeners at time of publishing of this too. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was difficult because we had so much content and it's just pulling 30 to 45 seconds from an episode you already have. So trying to figure out what is the best 30 to 45 seconds that will perform well on a social media platform. Just, do I need to re-record anything? And so I took a couple of different approaches to that. So in one, I took a short piece of a conversation from my very first episode and I used that. I didn't have a visual component, and retrospectively, I do wish I would have because I do think it would have helped with the performance of it. But I made it just an audiogram, which still worked for what we were doing. And then with another one, I created bonus episodes to help with the time requirements for some of the episodes. And the bonus episodes I had were listener submissions. So they would provide photos of their pet and a little story and introduction about their pet. And I would just rework it a little bit. And so I had made one that featured 3 different animals. And I decided I'm going to re-record this story. I'm going to make it a little more bite-sized and perform it a little bit more since it doesn't have to be a video. I used Adobe Podcast for that. And I was able to make a quick 40-second social media post. That one outperformed any of my other social media content. So that one did really well.
Do you know why?
I think it was the performance of it. So I think it was a short, bite-sized little story versus an excerpt from an interview that was still good, but it was also talking about fostering, and it's my partner talking about being cynical and how fostering changed that. So that one it performed okay, but the one that was about the 2 dogs escaping from their house and then finding a way to get back into the house before the dog sitter could get back, it's a little chaotic. It's fun. It is joyful. I think it's something that is for anyone who has a pet or who has had a pet, it's relatable. So I do think that's why that performed so much better.
Like you said, the story-driven element. People are attracted to that digital storytelling element of pets because we can relate. Most people can relate. Even if you've never had a pet in your life, you can relate.
Right. And it's true. And the graphics I used were a little bit different. The intro for the one I had with my partner started with the logo I created for the podcast, whereas the one that I had about the pets, it started with the photo of the pets. And so what are people going to stay on and watch? Are they going to watch this random logo for this brand they don't know anything about? Or are they going to stay and listen to a short story about these two dogs? I think that also impacted.
Fantastic. You've completed the actual social media assignment, and now it's time to think about the media kit. Can you share your media kit with us?
Yeah. So this is my social media kit for the Compassion Collective. That is the name of the podcast.
Walk us through that overview. Walk us through the pieces of this media kit so that we can see how it works and why it works.
Yeah, for sure. So in the podcast overview, I wanted to start with just a couple sentences. I didn't want anything to be too long, just explaining what it is the podcast is about, why it works, the different types of formatting it used. So it is mostly a narrative driven podcast. You can read it there. It explores how animals shape and heal our identity and our sense of belonging. And so we approach that in a couple of different ways. We have 3 different formats. So the solo narrative, which was my second episode, I talk about my cat, who you may have heard screaming in the background earlier. We have guest conversations, which I talk about my partner. I had my sister on for an episode, and then those extra life mini episodes. So I wanted to break down what are the components of the show and what are the different formats and ways that we reach people, because maybe someone who likes a solo narrative doesn't like guest conversations, or maybe someone doesn't want to listen to a 40-minute conversation between 2 people talking about their dogs, but they want to listen to a quick 6-minute story about a couple of dogs. And so it creates more reach for people who are looking for different things.
Excellent. For our listening audience, tell us more about the trailer.
Yeah, so I included the trailer, wanted to include some information about it here. So everything is clickable. The trailer goes into my purpose, why I chose to do what I'm doing, what to expect as the show goes on and moves forward. Again, it ends up being a little bit different from what actually happened. I maybe could have gone back and re-recorded the trailer, but I didn't do that because I think at the center of it, the essence is still the same. So I included that, and then some information about our target audience. So this is based on the persona that we worked on in the very first week. I went back, looked at, okay, what is it? What was my goal? What was my target audience for this podcast? And did I reach who I was looking to reach? I talk a little bit about that. I kept it short. Then we get into the host bio. So I included a photo of myself. I talk about my background professionally, education, employment, different things that really just shape who I am as a person, and which ended up shaping this podcast and the real why behind why I chose what I did. And then I did take another one of your courses, the PR and marketing course. So I included a link to that also. So if you wanted to see additional work, you can do that. Because I do think another skill is learning how to network, but also learning how to really put yourself out there and show these are my strengths and these are my skills in a way that feels authentic. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this is what I can do. So I wanted to make sure to include previous work.
When I talk to hiring managers, they often say, I love it when students have campaigns or ideas that are connected. And here you are connecting your podcast with your public relations, which I think is great, especially from a hiring perspective, because I'm looking for someone who can make the case, both business case, but also can have that personal side so that we can understand who they are as a person. You got to have the fun party person, and then you have the business person in the same project by having that business link.
Exactly. I talked about earlier how I wanted to choose something I was passionate about because I do think that makes it easier. And so anytime that I've taken a class where it's like, okay, you're creating a campaign for a nonprofit organization, or in my digital marketing class, it was, okay, you are creating a website and an app for this pretend business. It's always animal related because that's what I'm passionate about. And that's what makes it easier to get the work done. It feels less like work and more just like having fun and learning in a way that makes sense to me. So then I went ahead and I broke down each of my episodes. They're titled just by the animal that's being discussed in that day. I wanted to make sure to include the title of the episode, if it was a guest, the type of format it was, just to call back to that first section, and then any notable themes that came out within that conversation. So this is another area specifically with notable themes where if I was having trouble with it, let me throw that script into ChatGPT and ChatGPT help me figure out what are some of these notable themes that I should highlight and focus on. So something simple that you can help me with this. I linked every single episode. Episode 2, Misha, that's one about my cat. That's the solo narrative with just a description of the episode. So I do that for every single one of the Extra Life episodes. And those were a lot of fun because I sent out just a forms message to so many people in my life and on social media. And I didn't get as many submissions as I would have liked, but I do still have a couple sitting in my email. And I've promised anyone who has submitted anything before I close down the form, they will get an episode. So I have a backlog of a few that need to be produced. So those are a lot of fun though, because you get to see the way people view their dogs or their pets and how they have impacted their life. It's fun to be able to have people who are listening to your show and then feel like they want to share their own experience. So then we get into the listener demographics and statistics. So this is the infographic I created for this one. I didn't have a lot of that information from YouTube because it just doesn't track a lot of that information, but I posted links and reels and stuff to Instagram. So what I ended up doing was I used the information and the demographics from that to create my audience profile. Because I know majority of the time people were watching or getting my reels on Instagram and then they would click the link and it was leading to more YouTube watches as well. So the audience from there was carrying over to the audience from YouTube. So broken it down into age distribution, we have some listener geographic information. That was pretty cool because some of it, we have San Antonio, Lackland, Converse, Hollywood Park, that's all around. I have friends that live in that area, but what surprised me were the top countries because I had people from the Philippines and India who were watching my reels and showing up on YouTube. So that was pretty cool because I was not expecting that, expecting everything to be much lower than it actually was.
Well, the internet's a global community, right? And that's part of the fun.
Yeah. So some of it is just based on the persona. They're just guesstimates based on the information you have. You're not going to get that information. It was fun coming up with the infographics as well. It's something completely different that I've never really done before. So figuring out what information is necessary or what presents the best information, right? What makes it the most marketable? What is it going to be for a partner to look at it and be like, this is where I want to put that ad. This is where I want to put that money. This is where I want to invest. It was really, it's a different mindset than it is from the creation and production of the podcast.
Very different.
Yeah, you're putting on a couple different hats. And then this is just the reach performance metrics. I finished this pretty early, so it has gone up from here, which is great because it's great to see that it's still kind of moving and ticking upward. So that's been fun.
And if you're looking at this and thinking, why doesn't the algorithm or the audience? Because a lot of times it takes time, and this is a short course. It takes time to develop an audience.
Right. I mean, even then, though, I was like 700 views. Okay, I wasn't expecting that many views because at the end of it, by the time, but between the time you post your first episode and your last episode, it's 3 weeks. So, and the first episode doesn't even have to be public. So you can leave it there. So you're just sharing it with friends and family or people in the class. But then, so it's really kind of mind blowing to see it tick up so quickly in those first couple of weeks. And then just imagine if you continue it, it's only going to grow from there. And I do think that's the other thing to think about, right? I think this is kind of the perfect environment for if you're wanting to start a podcast and carry it on out, outside of the class, it's the perfect environment for that because you get to test different things and see how well everything works. And if it's not something you're wanting to continue, then just choose something that you really enjoy and really want to talk about.
A lot of people like to test ideas here, and then when they graduate, for example, they'll be doing something that's more professional oriented, or they'll be doing something that's more passion oriented. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, you can combine the two.
Yes. Yeah. So after that, we just do testimonials. My partner provided a testimonial for being on the show. I had a couple of submissions from people who submitted their pets for the Extra Life episodes. So that was great too, to hear feedback from them. And some of it was just unsolicited. Like I didn't even have to ask for it. People were emailing me back after I did the episodes. And so that was amazing.
That's got to feel good because that does not happen for most people to where you have unsolicited kind of emails from work, creative work that you've produced in not just podcasting, but other environments too.
Yeah, it was great. I think part of it too was so I created an email account for the podcast so that I could create that form for the submissions for the extra life bonus episodes. So whenever an episode was finished and then posted, I would email the person who submitted and just let them know, hey, the final product is up. Here's the link for it. So then they go watch it. And I think because of that, and because I wanted it to feel very personal. So I wanted to make sure they knew, hey, it's been posted. Here's the link. Let me know what you think. They were so quick to respond and, oh, this was amazing. Thank you so much. So I think if you create that, if you want to do something like that, that creates a nice little feedback loop for you too. So you can get that feedback. You can learn from your audience. What do you like? What do you not like? While I'm not continuing the podcast after the course, I was trying to think about it as if I were. So what are the things that I would want to do? Because a lot of my podcast was focused very heavily on creating a community. So in creating that community, it's keeping that communication open and making sure to, hey, this is done. Let me know if you want to talk about it or you want to provide any feedback. So,
And people often miss the community dimension of podcasting, but because you're interviewing people, you're really creating a community and you're nourishing a community anyway. And since you're nourishing a community anyway, it seems like it makes sense because you're able to better understand your audience. And it comes back to that feedback loop of if I understand my community, I'm understanding my audience better.
right, I can adjust what I'm doing to better fit that audience and to better fit that need and that want from them so that the reach becomes greater and it becomes not only greater in reaching more people, but it becomes more impactful.
And it's the kind of listening that public relations, advertising, all of our communication industry professionals have to do for their job. And it's fun to see it on this smaller scale for a personal passion project.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It definitely, there were times where it was just like, what am I doing? I'm overwhelmed. I've never done this before. But a lot of it, I think, is just kind of taking a step back and reframing that mentality of course, I've never done this before. That's why I'm in the class. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to hit it out of the park. I don't even have to get views. This is for me to learn the process and for me to learn what goes into it. And I think when you really take that step back and reframe it that way, it makes it so much easier to approach these large projects that seem daunting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the last part is the sponsorship and partnership opportunities. I kind of had a breakdown of this, but this was definitely something where I talked through it with AI, right? What does this look like? Give me more examples. How do I build this out a little bit more? What are the pieces that I'm missing? That really did help. And then I was able to kind of take that and put it into my own template, my own format, and create this opportunities page.
And you have merchandise.
I have merchandise. It's not real merchandise, but I created this is what some of the merchandise could look like. Because I do think that when you're taking these communications classes and you're looking at podcasting, at the end of the day, it is a business for someone, right? If you're getting partnerships and whatnot, it's because they think that you're going to generate some type of revenue for them. And I think part of that is merchandising. So I wanted to just create that. I thought it'd be fun.
I very rarely see people going into creating merchandise. This is one of those above and beyond, cool kind of moments because usually people are not going in. And how did you create this merchandise? What do you use?
I tried Shutterfly and then eventually I went to like Zazzle and I just let me upload my logo because it's my logo and let me see what it looks like on different things. And so then I just took those images and used them as like, these are examples of what merchandise could look like. So it was really easy to do. Anyone who wants to do that, you can go to almost any website that creates shirts or hats or anything like that, upload your design to see what it would look like. And it's just a rendering of it. So you use it and see what it looks better and what doesn't.
It's an added touch that made it yours that wasn't in the assignment guidelines, but was fun to do.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. I had so much fun scouring the website, like, oh, what do I want the logo to be on? A hoodie, a shirt, a hat, like what different things can it be on? And there are different options. And so it was a lot of fun to put together.
Awesome.
It was one of those, like, I kind of need a break from the rest of the stuff I'm doing, from the infographic, but still want to work on it. So this was something fun fun to do. And then I did create a second logo for that bonus episode. It's slightly different, but uses the same type of color scheme. I thought it was fun to do the 8-bit heart because it's extra life. And then I have my contact information.
Awesome. And so people can use this to get in contact with you now. Can you spell it out for us, for our listening audience?
Yeah. So,
the Gmail address, is that what you would share with people?
Yes. So the Gmail address is what I would share there. It is Compassion Collective Pod. That's CompassionCollective pod, P-O-D, @gmail.com.
And you're also on LinkedIn?
So I am on LinkedIn. I don't think I have LinkedIn on here, but I am on LinkedIn. But this compassion_collective_pod is my Instagram. I have an Instagram account that I had for my pets that I just moved over, and it became the Compassion Collective Pod Instagram account while I was in this class. So it's where I posted all of my reels. I posted the form so people could submit everything. And at some point, probably within the next 6 months, it will revert back to being Misha and Frankie. But for now, that's what it is.
Every pet needs an Instagram account.
Yeah, they should all have one. It makes it fun, and you get to pretend like you're talking for them and give them little personalities and stuff. So it's definitely fun.
Melinda, what is your final piece of parting advice for students who are coming to this class, who maybe they feel overwhelmed, maybe they feel like they're excited, maybe they're searching for their purpose pitch? What's your advice to those folks?
I think the biggest piece of advice is that growth is a process. It does not happen overnight. You're not going to come in and just immediately, okay, this is what I want to do, and it's not going to change. Like, be prepared to have things change. Be prepared to evolve your project, your ideas, maybe a little bit of who you are. We'll see how that goes, but nothing has to be perfect. It just has to be the learning experience for you. The other thing is, don't be afraid to reach out. Brian is great. Like, he responds so fast. Yep. Also, the class chat that we have, people are very quick to respond there and very helpful. And sometimes you get different perspectives and ideas, something that you didn't think of. Oh, I should have tried it that way. So don't be afraid to reach out. There is so much support in this class, and there's so much support throughout UTSA Online. Like, if you ever have any questions, people are willing and ready to help you and to answer those questions. So again, it does not have to be perfect. Ask all of your questions and just give yourself the grace to grow.
You mentioned UTSA Online. Zooming back out, why did you choose this online program? Why did you choose UT San Antonio Online for your experience?
So I'm from San Antonio. UT has always been there. It's always been in the background. I've attended summer camps there, and I graduated from high school and I went to a different university. Things didn't work out there. It didn't feel like the right fit for me. So I did get very discouraged when I decided to leave school, and it took me about 12 years to come back. And in doing that, part of it is working for the city. There's a opportunity there for assistance with tuition and whatnot. So that definitely made it to where it was like, okay, well, maybe that's where I need to look. But also, I do have a fondness for UTSA, just coming from San Antonio, living in San Antonio my entire life. My sister graduated from UTSA. So it's one of those things that feels like it's part of the city. And if you're from San Antonio, it almost feels like it's part of you, whether you go there or not. And so then in looking at everything and in applying, I'll be honest, I was a little worried I wasn't going to get in because my GPA at the other university was pretty low, but there was support throughout that entire process as well. So the admissions counselor talked me through everything. We had a plan for if I didn't get in. And so it was very supportive throughout the entire process. And it was like, this is where I want to be. And since I've been here, I feel like I've been thriving. It's been an amazing experience.
We gotta give a big round of applause to our support staff at the university then, because they really step up and help students to achieve their dreams and to be able to do that thing that gets them to the next level of their career. And even if their academic life, if they want to go on like you're choosing to go on, and you're choosing to apply to programs to continue your education after this experience, right?
Yes, and part of that is because of what has happened here. Like it just I've never felt like I couldn't reach out and ask a question. I never felt like, oh, this is so scary and I don't have anyone to turn to. I could always ask a professor or another student, even though it's all online and I don't really get an opportunity to meet a lot of people. There's still a community that forms within that and friendships that form within that. It's amazing. And if you need your advisor, they're very quick to meet with you and answer all of your questions. And I've never felt, confused or just alone within the experience, which is great.
And you're done with a course, you're graduating, but for those who maybe are still looking for courses to take, do you have any recommendations based on your experience here at UT San Antonio?
Yeah, so I would definitely take the digital marketing class, the digital marketing one. That was so much fun. You get to do so much. That is another one where it seems like, oh, there's a lot of work. I've taken 3 of your classes and I feel every time that I start the class, it always feels overwhelming because it looks like so much work. But I feel like in those classes is where I really pushed myself and found out what I was capable of. So I think without that, it would have been like, it's easy. But it's not. I'm learning so much and I'm gaining so many skills that I can use in my everyday life. And I've definitely seen more confidence in me from my supervisors and stuff too since I've started because I have more skills that I'm able to apply to my everyday work life.
Excellent. I love hearing that because, we know that it benefits people personally. We know that it benefits people academically, but it's so fun to hear the professional side of it because it absolutely can help you level up your professional career too.
It definitely can. And I think so much of life is just about perspective, right? And you have to go in with the idea that everything is a learning opportunity. Most things are not so serious that you can't undo a mistake. And I think a lot of people go in with this like anxiety. And I used to be that way too of, oh no, I messed up. I can't do that again. But okay, you messed up. And it isn't great sometimes that you mess up, but almost any mistake you make can be fixed.
And failure and mistakes are how we grow. Can you imagine a world where growth is impossible? Well, that's a world without failure or mistakes, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, again, Melinda Martini, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you sharing your wisdom and insights with our audience, and best of luck as you continue your education.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.